everybody, welcome back to How to Build a Yellow Aircraft F-16. So we're going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to show you how I designed the control panel template and kind of our facade for the front to give it a nice neat appearance. So this is a carbon fiber facade, but you could do something fancy like that, which I may end up doing. That one's actually pretty cool. I like it, or other things. So don't judge. All right, but my original plans were to use the carbon fiber look. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you how I created this. All right, and let's start from scratch. So I'm going to do File, New. I'm going to name this Control Panel. We're going to do a custom size, and I've already predetermined a little bit larger than our part size. That way we don't have to crop as much out. But we're going to do 118 millimeters, or I guess 117.93. That just changed. And we're going to do 85 millimeters for the height. So let's go ahead and also select transparent for the background. That's my preference on just about all my projects, but you can either do white or whatever the background color is, but we're going to do transparent. So hit OK. Alright, and I also selected 300 pixels per inch. That's a good printing resolution. So okay, we're going to drag this out just to fill our screen. Okay, so the very first thing that I did was the part that we just started making this last week. I scanned that in the scanner and saved it right here. Okay, so here's the scanned image. Now, when I scanned it, I didn't scan it directly into the computer. I scanned it onto my iPhone and then sent it to myself. Now, I believe that the file, when it was sent over email, was compressed, or the original size was reduced to send over email. So in short, this isn't actual size. This is about half size. But let's go ahead and drag it into our document, and I'll show you what I mean. So if you'll do this tool here, and we're going to select everything here, and you can do that by doing select all, and then we can just drag it right into our document that we just created. So now we won't need this original anymore, so I'm just going to get it out of the way. Okay, so obviously, since our document is basically the size of our part, this is not going to work. So what we need to do is enlarge that. We need to scale it. So on the Mac, if you hit Command T, on Windows you can do Control T. You get your transform controls. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this bottom right here, and you can see we can distort it really easily, which we don't want to do. If you hold Shift, it'll maintain the aspect ratio. So let's go ahead and hold Shift, drag it most of the way here, and double click. Okay, so now is this the right size? Well, now what we need to do is determine that. So in order for everything to work going forward, we need to make sure that this first step, that we have the dimensions correct. And so I know that this dimension, our center line, that needs to be 83.1 millimeters. Now Photoshop has a measuring tool here. If you go down to where this eyedropper is, hold the button, and then there's the ruler tool. Let's grab that. Let's go right from the very top here. Hold Shift, and it'll go straight up and down. And there we go. And I don't think we could have gotten any luckier than that. If you look up here, we're exactly 83.1, which is just what we wanted. So perfect. So now the next thing that we need to establish is we need to create some guides so that we know exactly where our center line is, where our holes are going to go for the air fill valve and the pressure gauges, and our air sequencer outputs. So to do that in Photoshop, for a horizontal, you just go up here to the ruler, left click, and then just drag down. And so we can go right there for our first guide. We'll go right here and line up with this pressure gauge hole, and we'll drag another down for the air sequencer outputs. And now we need to do some vertical lines, so we'll go right there. I'm not going to do the right side, and I'll explain that here in just a second. So we could drag one out for the left side of the hole here, and might as well just grab one for the bottom and the top of that hole too. So, okay. The reason that we didn't put anything over on this side is because right now we are going to just nuke the entire right side. We just aren't going to need that. Oh, you know what? We forgot our center line. So our center line is going to go right there. And let's get rid of that ruler so that it's not in our way. Okay. So let's go ahead and nuke that right half like I was talking about. We're just going to take the rectangle marquee tool and drag that entire right side. So we're just a little bit over our center line there. There we go. And if you just hit the delete key, bam, we just got rid of that. Now the very first thing that we need to do before we go any further is create another layer to work on. Everything that we've done right now, we're manipulating that scanned image, and that's not what we want to do going forward. We're going to need this image just kind of as a reference. So if you go down here to the bottom right and click this button here, that's the new layer tool. Alright, so now we've got layer 2. Alright, in layer 2, this is where we're going to start drawing our curves and our cutouts and everything that we need for our shape. So on the Mac, if you do Command D, on Windows do Control D, that'll get rid of that selection. That can be kind of annoying, the little moving marquee there. So, alright, so the very first thing we're going to do now, there's a lot of very first things apparently now that I'm listening to myself, but we're going to take the pen tool, and the reason that you want to use the pen tool is because you can do Bezier curves, which are just the nice, perfect curves. You could try to zoom in and draw individual small lines, but if you were ever to do that in another project and scale it up or down, it would look like straight lines that were just blown up. So we're going to use the pen tool. So very first point that we make, I want to make sure it's right on our center line, and I'm going to click just once to establish our starting point, and let's go down to about here. Actually, I'm thinking ahead here. I need room to move the mouse over here, and I'll show you that in just a sec. So let's do our next point right there. Okay, so on the first click, I'm still holding down the left mouse button, but it'll go from point to point, which is a perfectly straight line, which obviously we don't want. But if you start to drag, you can see you start to get a nice bend there, and I'm actually zoomed out too far, so we're not going to be able to see it. So let me fix that. Okay, yeah, we're pretty close, but I'm going to try one more time. Okay, now let's do it. There we go. mess with it till it's just right. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now that we've got that, if we go onto this path anywhere that we made, you can do fill path. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to use the background color, which is black, and hit OK. All right. So now we've got a nice half for our template. Okay, so now what I'd like to do um, is we need to cut out, let me turn off this layer. We need to cut out our switch area here. So how we accomplish that is the layer that, let's click back on our template layer here, and we're going to change the opacity here to about 40%. Alright, mouse battery's low. Alright, so about 40%, that way we can see what we're doing. I'm just going to take the rounded rectangle tool and let's do a radius of, let's say, 20 pixels, and that's how much the corners are radiused. And we'll just select that. Let's go fill path. Okay, let's fill the foreground color, which is white. Okay, well, now our piece is white. This cutout is black. I'm just going to select that, delete, delete. Okay, now we've got the cutout that I was wanting. Delete, delete. And if we turn off our background there. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see because it's white on white, but we can change that. Let's use the paint bucket. And we're changing our foreground color to black. There we go. Okay, much easier to see now. Okay, let's go ahead and draw our holes. So the very first hole that we need is going to be 7.7 millimeters, and that's for the air fill valve. If we go to the marquee tool and do elliptical marquee, up here you have options for normal, fixed ratio, fixed size. We're going to fixed size, and then we can do 7.7 millimeters, and the height 7.7 millimeters. And then that way all we have to do is click once, and we'll have that dimension. So obviously we want this to be centered. Oops. We want this to be centered on the hole there. So we're going to use just the arrow keys to center that best we can. All right. And once we're happy with that, just hit delete. And we've just punched a hole in there. Okay, and so the next thing we need to do is do this bottom one. Now the bottom one is 9.8 millimeters. So let's change that to 9.8 by 9.8. And just click somewhere else here. So there we go. So now you can see it's a bigger hole. Let's center that the best we can. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Hit delete. Alright, so now all we need to do is our air sequencer holes, but we are going to first duplicate this layer. So you can right click on your layer, duplicate. Okay, layer 2 copy, we'll just call it right side. Okay, and now go select all, edit, transform, flip horizontal. There we go. Now check that out. Move back over here. We should be pretty close now. I'm going to use the cursor keys here to see. Okay, so you see that gap that just opened up right there? We don't want that. We want it to touch perfect. So I'm going to use the cursor keys. Alright, we've just filled the gap. I'm going to do Control D or Command D on the Mac there, and we should have two perfect sides. Okay. So the only step that we've got left now is to add our air sequencer outputs. So again, we're going to use the circle tool. We're going to, the circle marquee tool. For this, we need everything to be 6.25 millimeters. Okay, and let's go ahead and pull up our first one here. Okay, let's create a new layer. Alright, and on that new layer, let's use white this time. Let's go ahead and fill that. Okay, so I want 4 more copies of this because we have 5 outputs. So I'm just going to do Command C or Control C, and then Command V or Control V on Mac, or I mean on PC. And let's just do that 4 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So you can see it copied that 4 times, and they're probably in random spots here. But let's go layer 4 and make sure we're on the move tool here. All right. So we'll go layer 5. Oh, it's up there. Okay. Layer 6. And layer 7. Okay, so we can see that they're kind of all over the place. They're not lined up perfect. In fact, I'm going to show you something here. So let's take a couple of these. Okay, so now what we can do, we can highlight each of those layers, just like that. And then up here in the top, there's different alignment tools. So we want them to all align horizontally. So let's go ahead and do that first. Bam. So now they're nice and neat. Since we have all the layers selected, we can actually move them as a group. There's the 3 that I'm most concerned with are the center one right here. We want that to be right there. Okay. Now, which one is this? Okay, so it's that far right one. Now the far right one and the far left one there need to be 48.38 millimeters apart. We don't need to worry about the rest of them. Let's just take a look at, let's grab our ruler tool again. And from edge to edge should be 48.38. And we're at 37.8. So we need to, let's just grab the left one here. I need to be on the move tool. Okay, I'm gonna hold shift and then let's drag, and by holding shift it keeps it on the same path it was, or orients it the same, see it moves perfectly straight. Okay, so let's drag that back, and then let's take a look at the far right one, hold shift, drag it. Alright, now let's see where we're at. And we are now at 44.3, and we need to be at 48.38, so we're still not quite there. So let's move tool again. Move this out. Move that out. Alright, back to our ruler. Okay, now we're 49.4, so we went just a little bit too far. So let's move again. Okay, go back. And we're at 48.3. So that's pretty good. So let's select all the layers again. And now, obviously, this isn't going to work because our air sequencer has these distributed evenly, and we can do that pretty easy in Photoshop too. So if we go back to our Move tool here, we've got all the holes selected for our air sequencer. And then if we go to this button, oh, no, sorry, there we go. This button here, we can distribute horizontal centers, and what that'll do is take the far left and far right one and then distribute everything else evenly based on that. So let's click it. Bam, look at that. So, and it looks like our center is off just a bit now, so let's move that again with the cursor keys. All right. And we're pretty much done. You could put the screw holes on here if you wanted to mark those. That may be different from plane to plane, so I'm not as concerned with that. But so now we need to show you how I got the textures. So very first thing, let's take the two halves. Let's combine those. So I grab the two half layers of our bulkhead, right click, and let's do merge layers. Okay, so now that's one piece. So now if I turn it off, the whole thing turns off. Okay, our holes here aren't actually holes yet, they're white dots, but let's go ahead and make that all one. So let's merge those layers. Okay. So now if we take our selection tool here, I'm going to select the center, hold shift, select the next one, shift, select next, shift, select next, shift, select next. That way we're selecting all that. We need to merge these two layers. So merge our bulkhead and the white hole layer. So let's merge layers. Okay, now we can hit delete, and we just created the holes. So the very last step now is we need to bring in those textures. So if you do File, Open, let's do the hazard stripes. Okay, and we're gonna drag those. Okay, so once you have a layer, you can actually go Layer and then create clipping mask, and what that will do is anything that's below it, it will take on that shape. So click that. Alright, so there's our hazardous texture. If we wanted to do the carbon fiber, I just downloaded these textures off the internet. But carbon fiber, we can drag that. Let's do select, drag it in. Okay, and we can just drag that below our. So if I turn off that hazard now we've got carbon fiber, and you can just basically do that with any picture. So the very last step that you'd need to do would just be to add text. So this is the text tool here. Just click, and we can type like airlines or you could do gear, doors, and we can move that wherever we need to. So we'll probably do it over here because the switch comes out a little bit and there's a nut that goes on there. So alright, so we'll do that, and then we'll do another one. Let's see, oops. And we're going to move the text on top of everything so that it always shows. So let's do another one over here for brakes. Move that over towards the edge. Alright, and let's go to view, turn off our extras there, and there you have it. That's how I created our template for our control panel.